In 1989, the first time I set foot in Cambodia, I had a few days off after coming out of the jungle. And on a Sunday, my brother and I went to visit a friend of his. He was a Vietnamese, the only survivor of a family of 9 that was killed by the communists. His parents were Vietnamese, civil servants in the former Republic of Vietnam government. After 1975, they fled to Siem Reap to live because they heard that the liberators would take revenge. They hoped to escape the revenge, but they did not expect that it would be the end of almost all of their family members. With only one person remaining thanks to the protection of kind people. This Vietnamese friend's name was Viet Loy, and at that time he was working in an agency similar to urban reconstruction. After a few conversations, he invited us to visit his house. It was a house, or rather a long row of 4-story houses, old and damaged by bombs, next to a school area, and a small football field. Yesterday, when I came back to look for that place, everything had changed completely. Now it was a very large and modern hotel, without any traces of the past. Mr. Loy confided to us that about the area where I lived, maybe they would have a few small surprises, or at least satisfy their curiosity a little. The row of houses where Mr. Loy lives is an old government agency of the Lan Non regime, which was later used by the Khmer Rouge as their workplace. There are 3 rows of 4-story buildings, including the ground floor, facing a large yard, with beautiful flower beds around them and an iron pole to hang flags. A few small ornamental lakes in front, and a large lake behind the row of houses, with many fruit trees such as star apple, mango, key ma pear, jackfruit, around the large lake, dense and overgrown because it was abandoned without anyone taking care of it. Along the small road next to the building are very large, straight oil trees, up to 10 or 20 meters high, very beautiful. But like many places where the Khmer Rouge regime was present, the space was gloomy and the feeling of cold death pervaded. The house he lived in before had been the scene of many incidents. But there was one incident that was most imprinted in Mr. Loy's mind. That was when the Khmer Rouge herded people from the city into concentrated labor areas in the countryside. They herded people into the yard, young and old. Anyone who intended to escape or resist was immediately killed as an example, and their bodies were thrown into the large lake behind. In just 2 or 3 days, more than 100 corpses were thrown into the lake. A few days later, those corpses floated up, giving off a terrible smell, and crows flew in flocks all over the city to eat the corpses exposed to the sun like that. There were 3 Vietnamese families living in this building. In addition to Loy's family, there were 2 other families. Loy's parents were civil servants, and in the other 2 families, the 2 fathers were 2 officers in the former ARVN army. They used to be commanders in the main combat units of the regime. So when they saw the bad signs from the forced population gathering, they quickly tried to evacuate their families. But it was too late. The adults were immediately arrested and killed when they were found to be Vietnamese. Only 1 man and 7 children from the 2 families remained. 4 girls and 3 boys. The oldest about 15 years old and the youngest only 2 years old. At that time, the remaining father was a former Special Forces soldier. He quickly looked for a place to hide the children. There was no place except the water tank above. He hid the children there. Just after finishing the last child, Khmer soldiers rushed up, dragged him down. The Khmer commander was about 50 years old, had lost a hand and an eye, questioned the soldier, knowing for sure that he would be killed anyway. The former Special Forces soldier quickly took out his short-barrel revolver and fired first. The bullet pierced the commander's forehead. The second bullet hit the face of a female postman sitting at the desk next to him. The soldiers were too surprised to react. Then they gathered around and shot at this former soldier, making his body look like a pile of minced meat, and his head, which was not completely crushed. They used a knife to cut it off and stuck it on a stake in the middle of the yard to set an example for the others. After the people were driven away, the children starved to death in the water tank on the roof. But they did not die immediately but a long time later with horrible deaths. Because of hunger they had to drink water instead of rice until the water ran out, and they slowly died from hunger and the heat from the sun. Several years later, when the savages had to flee because the Vietnamese army entered Siem Reap, the people were able to return to their old homes. Several hundred people left. Only less than 100 people came back alive. These people cleaned up the houses under the direction of the new government. When they reached the tank, opened the top lid, it was dusk. The people present recounted. A very strong stream of air blew out coldly along with something like a white smoke that quickly flew into the dense forest below. There were 8 skeletons of children dead in many positions. But the most terrifying thing was that in the mouth of a skeleton of a child there were other hand bones. Maybe the children who died before decomposed. The children who had not died because of hunger picked up the decomposing corpses to eat. That's why there were hand bones in the mouth like that. After that, this house area was like many other areas. Enough ghost stories have been going on for a long time. As people say, at night the wandering souls wander along the hallways screaming. Or in the middle of the day they break into the house and fight for food with the people living there. The food is spilled and rots very quickly. And at night in the middle of that large yard there are still unharmed ghosts walking. Or crawling on the ground in the clear moonlight. The screams of both children and adults occasionally echo in this house. I heard those screams one night here. First a woman's voice, then a child's voice that lasted like a whistle echoing right in the hallway in front of Mr. Loy's house. I opened the door and rushed out. And immediately the screams stopped as if the speaker had lost power. At night there were many footsteps going up and down the stairs. There were light footsteps like brooms. Heavy footsteps like soldiers marching. Sounds like bare feet running. During the day, even though the sun was like fire and hot. But walking in the hallways or many abandoned houses that no one had lived in, still made me shiver and sweat. When entering these abandoned rooms, I always felt like there were many pairs of eyes watching me. Sometimes there was no wind but in the corners of the room or closed rooms. Or in the hallways, there were still small whirlwinds that continuously stirred up dust and rubbish. And the winds still swirled from somewhere in the cold, empty rooms. I went up to that fateful tank. It was still empty. People no longer pumped water into it. Only the 3 tanks next to it had water. The lids were open. There was a musty smell in the tank. On the floor there were still faint brown stains. Magic papers, incense ash, black moldy votive papers left. People rarely came here, but strangely the brick steps leading to the tank were still clean as if children were playing there every day. The lake below is different. The lake is clear. Only on rainy days does it have a layer of green foam and bubbles on the surface. Under there are still remains. Both children and adults, even Vietnamese people. The surrounding forest is gloomy. Ripe fruits fall all over the roots. There is only the rustling wind and the sound of birds. Few people come here because of the stories told by the people here. Every night many ghosts still quietly grope in this place, picking up ripe fruits to eat. The people in that area seem very scared when mentioning Anka, who had 1 arm and 1 eye and was shot dead by a former CH soldier, below the building. Behind is a small road with rows of oil trees. There is a shrine. I once saw people go there to burn incense and set up some offerings. After going there on Monday, at night the 2 brothers did not sleep but invited each other to wander around the lake shore and the rows of fruit trees. Bats a lot. During the day there are crows. Crows flying like pigeons on Red Square in Russia. The sky is full. Pitch black, cawing loudly when seeing people. At night, down by the lake, I can clearly feel the coldness of the yin energy, not the weather. The space is thick with silence. My brother and I sat on a chipped stone bench, silently smoking and discreetly looking around. Around 2 o'clock, Mr. T gently pressed my hand. I glanced in the direction he just lightly nodded his head. About 20 meters from where we were sitting, there was the edge of the lake. People built a low fence about knee-high and steps leading down to a small yard close to the water's edge. There were 2 dark figures. They were busy doing something, but strangely there was a splashing sound, but the lake's surface was absolutely still. I turned my face to the upper bank, where there was a mango tree. Very big, low, lots of fruit, small, ripe, red and sweet like wild mangoes in the southeast. During the day I picked one to try. Right under the tree is where people buried the remains scattered throughout these 3 rows of houses and the remains at the edge of this lake. There is a small shrine right under the tree. Around that shrine, we saw many dark shadows lurking, both big and small. When my brother and I stood up and walked closer, we saw nothing. The moon was bright, but under the tree, the canopy covered the dark shadow. Absolutely nothing. Occasionally, in the garden, there were strange chirping sounds. Mr. Loy said that many people around here often saw many shadows there. They often picked up fallen fruit to eat. I didn't see anything. I only saw a few dark shadows crouching down doing something under the water's edge and lurking around the tree. On the way back, around 3 to 4 am when passing the shrine, both of us were startled. In the middle of the road a tall, dark figure stood tall, 2 hands hanging down, head shaking. We stopped. Both sides looked at each other for a few minutes. Then suddenly that shadow clung to the oil tree and climbed up very quickly with a strange climbing style that was not human. The 2 brothers looked at each other and sweated. Brother T muttered, "I wonder if it is a ghost or a demon." The next day, telling the story to Mr. Loy and his wife, Ms. Then, who was of Khmer origin, she panicked and told us, "That's the evil. That's the evil Sem Chuan." Sem Chuan was the one-eyed man who was shot dead by a puppet soldier years ago. Here people were still afraid of that beast and had to build a shrine for it. Very elaborate with curved arches and a pointed roof. So that shrine worships